Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Accuracy in America, brought to you by Accuracy in Academia. I'm your host, Don Irvine, joined by my co-host, Ryan McNichol.
Hello, deplorables, dregs, despicables, chumps, Neanderthals, semi-fascists, maggots, and of course those dog-faced pony soldiers.
That's right. I was going to reverse that. And at least you remember to put them in the right order as you like.
Dog-faced ponies. That's kind of like, that's the big,
Yeah, it's the good way to end that whole thing too.
Yeah,
It's kind of the icing on the cake and everything like that. All right, just our weather check. It's beginning to feel a lot more like spring.
Yeah.
And
both in terms of spring showers and then it's getting a little warmer. But yeah, it's a rainy time of year, and that's good. We need the rain. Go into summer with some rain. You won't have a drought and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. And rain impinges upon your golf game, though.
It does. But the thing about Virginia is, right, if you golf here, after about the 1st of November till about the 1st of May, you're golfing in a swamp. I mean, you can still enjoy it. It can still be fun, but it's, nasty out there. It just is. But I'm not going to take 6 months of the year off of golf, worried about mud or whatever. So.
Yeah. Yeah. And, and we've been, I think we talked about this. I mean, we've been pretty lucky. We've gotten away without the real harsh winter.
Right.
I mean, memories keep popping up on Facebook showing, 7, 8, 9, 10 years ago, 5 years ago, it was snowing on this date. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, when I see it, I'm like, oh yeah, I remember that. But boy, I'm glad that's a distant memory every time I see those.
Yeah, we've had a bunch of winters in a row where we're just below the jet stream, so we get the warm side of the storm, which is, rain's, it's annoying if you got to go out in it, but when it's over, it's over. There's no mess to clean up.
And we didn't, you're not getting anything close to what they got in Northern California and the Sierra Nevada, all that 190-mile-an-hour winds and just all that snow pouring down like crazy.
Yeah, I guess the Donner Pass is closed. Eat your heart out. Maybe literally, but anyway.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, we had that, and we didn't talk about this, but we had. I mean, I think they got it under control now, right? The wildfire in Texas, but that was big. I mean. I think probably, I guess, the biggest in their history.
Yeah. And it's grassland. I mean, I don't know if you've ever been in that part of Texas, but, there's virtually no trees. There's not enough water to support trees. So, it's just grassland there's if you drive through there, like a I-40 across the northern part of Texas Panhandle and so forth, there's windmills. Just millions and millions of windmills along the road because, there is a lot of wind and it does, the wind blows most of the year and there's nothing to stop the wind. So, in terms of, they really can't store the power and so forth, but that's one place where wind does have a chance to work.
Yeah, matter of fact, when I was looking at the map, I'm like, oh, wait a minute. I'm pretty sure that's where we drove through on our way back from Arizona because we came through New Mexico and through Amarillo, and there are lots of the windmills and everything like that. And I said,
I made that drive a few times. That's a long drive.
Not a lot to see.
There's not a lot to see.
Okay. Well, anyway, still no ceasefire. With Israel and Hamas. It seems that, the administration is really trying to find a way through this. This is really becoming a bigger political problem for them. The voices on the left, the pro-Hamas supporters are getting louder and louder. And so we're seeing this. I mean, I think Kamala Harris called, she was calling for a ceasefire. And it's almost like they've forgotten how we got here in the first place. And now it's like we have to placate the left because November is coming and we've got to do something about that. I'm just kind of curious as to how this is playing out with the pro-Israel Democrat wing of the party when they see, their own party leaders starting to kind of weaken and starting to say, we've got to find an answer. And they're starting to kind of backtrack on their support of Israel. I don't see how that's good. I'm not sure what happens, in say, for Trump, on this issue necessarily, but I think right now the damage is being done to Biden and the Democrats.
Trump's in perfect position in this because he almost never gets asked about it, for one thing. And for another, if you do ask him, he will say there's towns in Israel named for him, right? So, he's very the most pro-Israel president we probably had since 1948. And that's the right side of it. It looks like it's still about a 70-30 issue pro-Israel. All the dissent, all the pro-Hamas part of this is on the other side. So, they're having a civil war over this. They're having a civil war within their party over immigration too, because these immigrants, it's not just a problem for Eagle Pass, Texas anymore. One thing the Republicans have done a real good job of, they made it everybody's problem, right? And now we find out the Biden administration is flying illegal immigrants into the country on its own. They're not even making you sneak across the border anymore. They're going and getting you and giving you a free flight into the country. So, I don't know. They are reading this issue differently than I think the American people are, right? Because right now it looks like they're hemorrhaging support over it. Israel is not going to agree to a ceasefire until Hamas will at least tell them which hostages they still have and which are still alive. So, and until they do that, they're going to keep finishing the job of wiping out Hamas, which is what I think they ought to do. Like, let's deal with this problem now. Take whatever slings and arrows from the world community that wants you to surrender. Deal with it all now, get it dealt with so that they're not shooting at you all the time.
Yeah, I don't know. It just seems to me too that on this thing that their hostages have been killed. Are there no repercussions to Hamas, for killing these hostages? You put the pressure on, say Israel needs to have a ceasefire because all these civilians, according to the health service,
Right.
have been killed, right? Yeah, and so that's, to me, that's like letting Hamas get off scot-free if they can go and get hostages and then just kill them and not pay them.
Rape and brutally murder people.
Right.
Let's not forget this was bad. Yeah, that's right. That's right, because they can't. And I don't know. You look at college campuses. Another thing that's happening here is Biden was counting on colleges to give him about a 80-20 edge, and it's going to be very close to half because of issues such as this.
Yeah, I don't know how I don't know how the voting is going to wind up breaking down come November. There's no doubt that there is an erosion of support among the traditional sectors that the Democrats, are usually used to counting on, and are used to saying that these guys are kind of basically there. We don't have to worry about them too much. But I also wonder whether or not there's going to be some apathy among some of those groups that they just won't vote at all.
Right. That's right. The problem with the Democrats we're talking about already is they have an enthusiasm problem, right? They're not sure their people can get to the polls, and they're better at identifying all the voters and contacting them and getting to the polls than we are. A lot better. But they're worried about not being able to do that this time because people are just not. There's no enthusiasm for going out and voting for Joe.
Yeah, and that's bad. That's bad for them for the top because they want to retain the White House, but that also trickles down ballot with the House and the Senate races that are in play. Right. So, if traditional Democrats that have been supporting these guys do not come out and support Biden, then there are Democrats that also don't get votes, for Senate and for House.
Right.
That would be to the Republicans' advantage, which is fine by me. But yeah, I think the Democrats are facing a huge conundrum here in the fall with all of this. It's just things are just not looking good for them overall. But they are trying to put a good face on it. As much as one can.
Yeah, it's almost like as somebody who's not for the Democrats, it almost looks too good to be true, right? So in the last couple of weeks, Biden has gone from being about 45 or so on Rasmussen, which is everybody thinks that that's a conservative poll and a low reading, but they've been higher on Biden approval than any other pollster for about 2.5 years now. So, he that's the people in Biden's camp. It went down to about 41, 42, and then it went to 41, and today it's 40, and it's been 40 off and on for the last 2 or 3 weeks. So support is eroding for him. And this is a day, the reason that I follow that one is it's a daily track. They're doing it. It's a rolling average of 3 days. So you can see the trends. You can see things coming and going. And, he's losing support. It's still, the arrow's still pointing down for Biden. So, I don't know, the Democrats in Congress, it looks like now that the Republicans are almost certain to retake the Senate. The question is, can they hold the House? And that is where what you're talking about comes in. Some of the redistricting will help them on the margin, 6 or 7 seats. But then, even though the Republicans only have a 3-seat majority now, the redistricting may not be enough to help the Democrats because of the national mood is against them. But it is, it's also, we're in single digit days of March, right? We are in early March. This gets settled in early November. So that's 8 months. So it's a long way to go. But right now it's like, you can't, it's hard to even imagine what the trend line would be and what would cause it that would reverse this. Because right now it looks like, slow descent into electoral mediocrity for the Democrats at every level.
Yeah, I mean, this is going to be an interesting campaign because the length of this campaign, not that we basically have settled on the candidates.
Yeah, that's right. As of last night, we've settled on the candidates. Yeah,
so we know where we're going with the presidential nominees, and so what will they do? I mean, it is hard to say, barring an October surprise, from the Democrats, that they're going to be able to do much about this. I think James Carville even, was saying, had some remarks about Biden, and he actually pointed to the fact that Biden didn't do the Super Bowl interview as a troubling thing, that, he punted on that. And he says that tells you a lot. And I mean, it's an interesting barometer that Carville would use the Super Bowl interview, but that interview has become kind of a standard lately, right? Over the last several years, that the sitting president, does an interview. And
well, one of the things I love about Carville is, of course, every time he gets on TV, he's wearing LSU stuff, right? He's one of my peeps, and the guy, I've met him a couple of times, and we always talk LSU football and so forth, right? And he's up on it. He's knowledgeable about it. He knows like who the second string tight end is and all that kind of stuff. So, but the other thing I like about him, though, is he does tell the truth, even when it's good for his side and when it's bad for his side. So when he tells the truth that it's good for his side, it worries me because, he really is looking at the polls. He really is, getting really granular about what he sees. And what he's saying is that was that's a lodestone. Biden came back, I guess, a couple of days later. Yeah, that's right. If he could, he would. It comes back a couple of days later, and he goes on one of the late night Seth Meyers or one of those. Yeah. It's like I don't even know who these people are anymore. It used to be, that was a giant thing. Letterman and Johnny Carson, and this was a huge part of American, psyche and so forth. But now it's like, I don't even know when they come on or who's on which network is Jimmy Kimmel on. I have no idea, right? So. But he has this, they have this problem now, and he's like, everybody watched the Super Bowl, 115 million people watch the Super Bowl, and they're like, well, we usually have this thing that we don't have going on Seth Meyers or whatever his name is 2 or 3 days later doesn't really change that, right? That's a set piece, and they can stop and refilm. This is, you forfeited a chance to tell the country that you're on the ball and ready to rip, right? And you did in place of that, you told the country you will avoid speaking in public when you can, right? And that we can't have a president like that,
right? And the Super Bowl, I mean, these are sports fans. They're not necessarily all voters. Some of them could be people who might be convinced to vote, based on what you say. I mean, this is
especially now, and this one, is riding a little higher. It's weird how these stories are dominate the news, and then go out. But remember, this was sports fans plus Taylor Swift fans, right? That's a whole new public, and it's giant. It's a gigantic public, right? And it's to say, well, I'm too old to come out and say a few words. You told a bunch of pretty persuadable people, because you got to figure the average Taylor Swift fan will at least listen to what Biden has to say. And very few of them are, doctrinaire Trump supporters. I mean, some are, but not that many. So that was really punted opportunity there.
Yeah, I mean, and conversation of a lot of Swifties are younger teens, but they're also into that young demographic that the Democrats think that they have in their hip pocket.
Depend on to win elections, not just but depend on.
Right. Yeah, no, it's not good at all for them, when you look at a lot of these things. And you're right. I mean, Carville is he's a character. I mean, the whole marriage to Mary Madeline, I think when that happened, kind of stunned the political world, like talk about, what was going on there. But I think they are a good fit. They've shown they're both very honest, and forthright about their opinions. Right. And I think either one of them, you can trust them on either side to kind of just tell you the truth, and they're not throwing up a lot of garbage and a lot of other stuff to try to hide things. So yeah, I mean,
he's not a nerd. Like, he understands the importance of sporting events, right? He's he knows like what March Madness means to America, right? And a lot of these people don't. They live in this part of the country, where these things, March Madness and the Super Bowl and college football, they don't really matter, right? But there it does. Every kid that grows up in Louisiana, whether you're into football or not, it's a big deal.
Right. And I mean, and if you hear a guy like Carville talk sports a little bit, that takes some of the sports fans who may not have been as interested in politics to say, oh, I want to listen to what he has to say. Especially if you're an LSU fan or something like that, you're like, okay, what's this guy got to say? I want to hear that. There's so many factors that influence people in their voting. A lot of it is not just the straight, it's immigration, the economy, stuff like that. Sometimes it's these other factors that get them to that point in the first place. And they say, well, he's pretty smart. He knows his stuff. If he knows his stuff about LSU football or basketball or whatever, he's probably worth listening to. And you don't get that very often with a lot of these guys. They're pundits, or they talk about politics all the time, and that's all they know, and they just want to pontificate and promote themselves and puff themselves up and then move on to the next thing. So
I think also in terms of like listening to people on the other side, Axelrod tries to give you a straight view.
That was actually going to be my next thing. I was going to ask you about how you felt about Axe, because we have seen, over the last couple of years or so, 2-3 years, Axelrod has been very honest and very forthright about things, much to the dismay, I think, of liberal Democrats, in terms of what he's had to do. But, this either side of the spectrum, you need people like this to kind of hold your feet to the fire. And you've got a problem, you got to fix it. If you don't fix it, you're going to lose. And what neither Axelrod or Carville want to do is they don't want the Democrats to lose, this election. They don't want them to lose the White House, and they don't want to lose the Senate, and they want them to win the House. And they're pointing out the problems that this administration is going to have, the Democrats are going to have in November. Once again, as like you said, it's 8 months away, and there's a lot that can change, but it just is. There's just not a lot of hope on the horizon if you look at it right now. Where's the big shift? What is going to shift this, so much in favor of Biden? And as the incumbent, he should be doing a heck of a lot better. He should not be in this situation where he's going to be in a dogfight.
He is in considerably worse situation than Trump was at this point in 2020.
Yeah.
Considerably worse. So could recover. Like you say, it's a long time, and their bag of dirty tricks will all get emptied out here. I don't know though. Part of me says that they are. Scott Adams talks about thinking past the sale, that they already know that Trump's going to win, and they're on to like how to deal with that. Right? They really can't remove Biden from the bracket, I guess, the ballot at this point. The only real choice then would be Kamala, who performs much worse in the polls against Trump than Biden does. So, they're stuck with him. They're going to ride down with him, but I think they're already looking past the sale.
Yeah, I mean, the Democrats for the White House, their best hope is that, Trump does some of his,
Trump's got to do it to himself. If he doesn't do it to himself, right, they're not going to win.
Yeah, I mean,
that's simple. And I don't think that any of these court stuff is going to matter. It's not going to end up mattering.
Yeah,
no one cares what Alvin Bragg is talking about, and even if he can even win a conviction, which is not at all a certain thing, and none of the rest of them are likely to even come to trial before the election. Yeah,
look, I mean, the fact that Trump has actually benefited by all of this action, in terms of us on the political side, and basically vanquished every foe that that thought they had a chance. That's something. I mean, even
here's the thing about this. So the business that you and I have been in for years is media bias, right? Talking about media bias and trying to point out to people that just because Walter Cronkite or whoever says something doesn't necessarily mean it's true. Right. This is a win for us. This is a win for what we've been doing. The credibility of the media has been destroyed to the point that, 91 criminal indictments helps the guy. Right. We can all see that this is done to win an election. It looks like election interference. And you look at the polling, it's like 65% of Americans think that politics has at least something to do with why Trump faced all these charges. Right. So, I mean, the country is onto it because of, in part because of the work that you and me and other people in our field have done to point out the problems, with believing the media.
Right. I mean, and it becomes so blatant. I mean, we had also this whole thing where the Supreme Court came in and on the Colorado case and said that the states they can't throw Trump off the ballot. The media went apoplectic about this. Yeah. I mean, the liberals have gone.
It was like, what did you think was going to happen there?
Yeah, really.
Everyone told you that this was a ridiculous case. And then when it went to the Supreme Court, the justices made clear that they also thought it was a ridiculous case. And then you lose what you knew going in was a ridiculous case. And you're all like, how could they do that? Threat to democracy. It's like, bro, and then people are like, we should pack the courts. Okay, you got to pack it all the way to 19 to have won that case. Clarence Thomas should have recused. Then it would have been 8-0. I mean, every judge said, no, we can't do it this way. Every one of them, even the ones who hate Trump.
Yeah, I mean, they all voted, on this case. They weren't all in agreement about all the exacting things on there, the particulars necessarily, but they also knew that there was no other way to vote but to say, oh, Colorado, you never should have brought this case. You can't do this, right. And and that has ramifications. We had all these other states that were trying to do the same thing. All these dumb ideas that people
Democrat activists, out to get Trump.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's right. It's like they have been such hacks for so long that you can't take them seriously. And we're talking. Look at what we're talking about here. There's guys. There's 10 of them on the set. There's one guy there you can take seriously. Axelrod we're talking about, Carville, but the other 7 or 8 are complete hopeless hacks, and to ignore them, right? So I mean, the leftists enjoy watching that and getting even meaner and nastier to their fellow man. But, most of us got a life to live.
Yeah. And you mentioned the thing that always drives me crazy, about kind of their knee-jerk reaction to these types of things, which is, a threat to democracy, and Trump is a threat to democracy. All these MAGA Republicans are threats to democracy. It's like, give me a break.
Yeah, taking people off the ballot, there's a threat to democracy.
Exactly.
Making up charges and laws to, undoing a statute of limitations law to let in one lawsuit, right? That's not democracy,
Well, Well, and I was thinking about this, about the ballot issue, in terms of like, Democrats have been, they complain about a lot of these voting, laws and stuff like that. And they talk about disenfranchisement. It's like, well, is this not disenfranchisement if you take this candidate off the ballot like this, especially because it's unconstitutional? I mean, that to me is ultimate disenfranchisement. Yeah. But they were
a crime he has not only not been convicted of, it hasn't even been charged with.
Right. Yeah. No, it's unbelievable. It's just threat to democracy. Disenfranchisement, racism, all of these things that the Democrats keep throwing up. But that's
what they're doing.
Exactly. Yeah. They're the perpetrators of all of this. Yeah. It's like it's not the Republicans that are doing this. It is the Democrats, these liberals that are doing this, and they don't see it. My wife was she watches a lot of news via YouTube, so she Fox News and Megyn Kelly and whatever. A lot of the stuff because of YouTube's algorithm, it just kind of shoots you from one thing to another. So she winds up seeing a whole bunch of different things. I think maybe some Daily Wire and who knows what. But she was asking me the other day because she doesn't pay super close attention to what happens, say, here in Maryland, and she goes, it's like, so is Jamie Raskin here? And I said, oh yeah, he's in Montgomery County. He's basically a communist. And she had seen something he had done, and she was livid, about this, and just kind of like, how do they get away with this stuff, right? I mean, these people that just blatantly lie, and the policies that they are trying to put forth, it's incredible. I said, yeah, I mean, we Republicans in Maryland know that Jamie Raskin is a communist, but he's there.
He's ridiculous. He's especially bad.
He is especially bad. I mean, he's near the top.
Yeah, he's a demagogue and a liar, and he had this whole like fundraising thing he pulled on the suicide of his own son. He like monetized the suicide of his kid. I mean, that's a special level of disgusting to me.
Yeah, what scares me is that if he sees an opening somewhere that he would consider running for Senate or some other higher office, in Maryland, and then just like, no, don't, please, I don't do that. That would be the ultimate worst. But Maryland, things happen in Maryland.
Actually, the thing about honestly, a guy like that gets in the Senate. This is the term. Yeah, that's true. That's
Here's
true.
Another one.
Yeah, that's true too. A guy like that in the Senate, though, you put him in the back. You put him in the back row, and no one listens to it. So
he would. I mean,
at least neutralize completely.
Right. Yeah, that's true. That's true. I mean, he would. You don't get to voice your opinion in the Senate like he does in the House.
Right.
The procedures and everything are very different, and so you can neutralize a guy like that much easier, when you've got 100 members versus 435 members,
right.
And stuff like that. So it doesn't seem that Raskin has any necessarily ambition for that, because I think if he had, he would have maybe jumped into this Senate race, for this year, but he's conceded that to Trone, and I think Angela also Brooks is one of the other ones that is running. So that'll be that actually on the Democrat side, that would be interesting because, like I think you mentioned last week talking about, all the money that he has from his total wine and beer, empire. And then also Brooks has been running Prince George's County. I mean, heavily, Democrat, county, that she get a lot of support out of there. The question is that statewide, how will they do?
Right.
That's kind of where I give Hogan a little bit of an advantage because he was the governor. He has a little bit of an inside track of having governor, a popular
won a statewide race. Yeah.
Right, and he won a statewide. And so he's kind of a known quantity there without baggage that they can really attack. As I've said before, is like he's going to be hard to pin down and say, you do this and you do that, because he dealt with the Democrat legislature for 8 years and he could only do a limited amount of things. So he doesn't have this overly conservative, track record of having done things. He doesn't have, and he's not tied to Trump. So Trone and also Brooks or whoever else, gets into that race, and whoever winds up winning the nomination for the Democrats, they're going to have a little bit of a tough time with him.
Yeah, he could be a tough out.
Yeah,
it's one of those deals though. If you told me that we will for sure get the majority without Hogan, then I would be for without Hogan.
Yeah,
because he will just be a pain in the neck.
Oh yeah.
I mean, these guys. How many Susan Collinses do we really need?
Yeah, that's always the other side. It's like, okay, we need the R vote, but it was kind of like, I don't know, for Maryland, when we had Connie Morella for all those years, and it's like there are a lot of Republicans I knew. It's like, it's just, oh gosh,
Yeah.
But
thanks for that.
Yeah, but she was an R, and we needed R's, and she at least would vote Republican. She would easily vote Republican more than a Democrat would ever vote Republican.
Right.
Taking that seat. Right. We saw all the Democrats that took over afterwards, and it just went further south after that. So in that sense, she kind of held the line on some things, but it's like we'll take them, but we don't really need them. But in Maryland, that tends to be the kind of people we're going to get because of the vast registration differential. In Montgomery County, Prince George's County, the areas that are more liberal, you're going to wind up with that. So that I'll take that. I mean, I would love. I'll take a moderate Republican elected anywhere in Montgomery County, whether or not it's the state house or the county council or something like that. Someone who can just throw up a blockade once in a while against the Democrats, because
at least not have all these things being
there's nothing to stop them.
Yeah.
There's nothing to stop them. And, I look at my prospective property tax bill coming up for this year, and I'm like, "Oy, this is going to be another unpleasant thing here," because there's no
limiting principle.
There's no movement to have them initiate a tax cut in the tax rate. Right, because the property values on this current cycle, have soared. Gone up about 25% on the average home, and so the property taxes are going up a significant amount for every property owner, but that they get that money without lifting a finger, right? So they get more money into the budget. How about giving the taxpayer some relief and minimizing that tax increase so that we don't feel as much pain? There's, Democrats don't think like that. They don't, it's tax and spend. They'll take that money and they'll find a place to spend.
They'll redistribute it and take credit for it.
Right. Exactly. All right. So we had Super Tuesday last night. I don't know if that was anticlimactic, compared to recent Super Tuesdays or whatever. Trump won 14 of 15 races. Only lost Vermont to Nikki Haley. Haley, if she hasn't already made the announcement officially, had gone up there, is suspending her campaign today. That's what the word is.
I was hoping she'd stick it out for the 2 weeks. She has the money, and I think it's good. I think it's good for Trump to, that the country sees every Tuesday night. Trump 84-12 in Alabama last night. 79-15 in Texas last night. Right, those big, huge numbers like that he's getting. So, it means what it means. He's already getting all the deals. She already did, Bob says. So good. Right. So I guess it's over now, but that was, I think it was a good psychological boost for Trump that, he kept winning these enormous landslides. After last night, I saw as the results were coming in, were being finalized and started to get around midnight, you started to see the first leftist attempts at spin. Trump's support was not all that strong. And you saw a bunch of people nah, that was pretty strong support. She was starting to say, it was pretty strong support. And so you kind of knew that, there's no way to spin it. That was an enormous blowout victory for Trump last night.
Yeah, I mean, the thing, a win is a win, one way or the other. I mean, there are places where, Haley, you got to give her credit, even, in some states, where she was still getting between 30 or 40% of the vote or whatever, which begs the question, what happens to those people who supported her? She's not endorsing Trump right now. I think she will eventually endorse Trump. I think that's inevitable. And Trump is only he's a couple hundred, 220 or something like that, delegates away from sealing the nomination, officially, that way and by delegate count. So, I mean, it's over, basically. It's all but over. So I think she'll come around at some point. But, now it's kind of a question of some of these Haley supporters as to, do they go out and, do they vote for Trump, or do they at least go out and vote for the down ballot people, which is a necessary thing that they need to do. My feeling in general is that, and I've said this many times before too, is that, from 4 years ago, this whole anti-Trump, never Trump faction has weakened considerably. And so as a result of that, you have people who were in that camp 4 years ago who are like, after all this Biden administration, all this nonsense in the Biden administration, are willing to give Trump a chance. And as you said, I mean, Trump's his own worst enemy, right? I mean, if he doesn't shoot himself in the foot, he's fine. If he comes across, as a reasonable person, talks about the policy, he can call Sleepy Joe Sleepier Joe and do all those things. I'm okay with that, but kind of try to stay on message, and remind people about these Democratic policies that are not good for the country, not good for them. Then I think he walks away with it.
I think one of the things that, the unremarked story about all this is, the view of Trump is that whatever earn. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. That's reasonable.
Okay. Gotcha. And we also remember that like about half the votes that Haley got were Democrats crossing over, playing in our primaries. Okay. But the other half, let's do some work and see, what it takes to bridge that gap. It's probably not that much. There's probably policies that Trump's willing to deal. It's a matter of tone and so forth, as you say. But the Trump operation is smarter this year. They're not doing the same stupid stuff they did. They didn't have the camp. You're not going to read about the campaign manager beating his wife and getting arrested with his shirt off in the driveway drunk and all this stuff. You're not going to have all that kind of stuff this time. You have people who they've done this for many, many cycles, and they know what it takes to win, and they know how it works. There are far fewer like stupid gaffes this time. It's far more like a traditional campaign operation this time. And he you look at the speeches, you look at the talks he gives, they're pretty policy heavy at this point, right? He does his thing. I don't know if you've seen he imitates Biden leaving the stage. And you got to go like Google it. It's really funny. And he cracks up the whole crowd and all that. He's entertainer. He's going to do that. But he's disciplined in a way that he wasn't disciplined before. I think that, Trump put some study into why he lost and how was this even close, right? And which is a fair question. So, and I think that the answer has come back as far as he's concerned. We need to run this more intelligently, with more discipline and so forth. And that's what he's done.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not even calling for a complete makeover of Donald Trump.
That's not what's needed. But like for instance, one of the things they're telling him is we can have these rallies. Okay. But rather than having, 7, 8, 10 rallies a month, why don't we get it down to 2 or 3? Because they cost $500,000 each. And I guess you make some money out of them, but it's that day you're out $500,000. So, why don't we do them in the right places and do fewer of them and try to do the less is more thing.
Yeah, I mean, I was talking with my wife this morning about this. I said, look, I mean, I think there are people out there that are willing to vote for Trump if he stays on message. And that's what you're basically saying here, is that what you've seen is a much more disciplined Donald Trump. That's almost like the Democrats' greatest fear.
Yeah.
They want the kind of the unhinged Donald Trump, never know what he's going to say. But if he stays closer to the script in terms of heavy on policy, less on all these other kooky attacks and other things like that, then they're good. And also any of these other scandals, that had kind of gripped them in the past campaigns, those are behind them, by and large. So that's harder to use as a weapon against Trump. You talked about these court cases; they're going nowhere in terms of damage to Trump and his electability. They've actually been helping him.
Yeah, I think it's one of the things that the 9-0 decision this week told them we can't rely on the courts. The courts aren't going to save us. Yeah, right? I think that's part of what their anger was that it's dawning on them that that strategy did not work and is not going to work.
Yeah. So yeah. I mean, I know the liberals. I mean, their work now, for the House is work to overturn Republican drawn maps in a lot of places. We've seen a lot of that effort try to turn them into Democrat leaning areas, and they're having some success with that in the blue states. But by and large, I think the Republicans, they should be fairly optimistic. But because you have 8 months to go, especially in the Senate and the House races, they can't get cocky about any of this. They better make sure they fight for every single vote along the way, because it's gonna be a battle, come November, and they got to make sure that these things. And I guess what was it? There was primary in like in Alabama. I think was it anyway? So where two Republicans were redistricted into the same district, and they were basically trying to out MAGA each other. I mean, one of them was going to lose, but they basically, things like that are going to happen. But I think there's still this very MAGA effort on the part of candidates to say that we still think that Donald Trump is the winning ticket, and we are going to use that to get to where we're going to be. I mean, Texas.
Also, on that point, Bob, when you want to weigh in on this, is Bob has a student who's a member of Congress. Former student is Tony Gonzalez, who is from South Texas, and he has to go to a runoff last night because he has been deemed not sufficiently MAGA, and a MAGA Republican forced a runoff with him last night. So,
that's interesting. Yeah, because
and he should win, but yeah.
Apparently, Dinesh D'Souza's son-in-law won last night, so he's in a red district, so he'll probably easily go to Congress. So that'll be interesting.
But yeah, that's true too. That's another big point is we've resisted the early voting and all that kind of stuff, and it's like I would love a law that says we all vote on election day. You got no excuse. If you're in military overseas, we'll send you something. Other than that, you either show up or you don't vote. But that law has not been passed and is not likely to be passed or put into effect by November. Therefore, and in fact, a lot of the people on the right are saying, do not wait for election day. Go vote early because, scam madness things could happen. You could get a little plague dropped on you right before the election. I don't say it's never been tried, So, you got to figure as it dawns on the Republicans, the Democrats, that they can't win, right? They're not above turning over the whole apple cart, because they couldn't get their way. So, could be a rough year, and it may make sense to go get your ballot in the box before, the stuff starts happening.
Yeah, no. I mean, I think I've seen this here in Montgomery County. I mean, it's like I just realized, like, it's just I've embraced for the mail-in voting and whatever. It's convenient, but it also makes sure that in case I happen to fall sick or something else should happen to me on election day, my vote's going to get counted. And there has been this thing about with a lot of Republicans is that we will only the only way to vote is vote in person on election day. And I understand that because that's the only way we had, barring an absentee ballot, which was, you had to prove, you had to show a good cause as to why you could not vote in person before they granted you an absentee ballot. But it's a little like college sports and NIL. The voting system is broken in that way. The Democrats are now in control of this. They've taken full advantage of the laws that they've passed with all the early voting and all this other stuff, same day registration and, all motor, voter, kind of all this kind of stuff that benefits them. And Republicans spent too much time and effort resisting these things. And I think it's been much to their detriment. It's like, look, you're going to have to play their game, especially in the states that they kind of control the levers. And if you want to get your guys to have a reasonable chance of winning.
That's right.
So
get the vote in the box.
Yeah. I mean, election day, it's in November. I mean, it could be pouring rain in some places, and that could discourage people. You could have a snowstorm if you're in the Rockies, in the West.
Right. The other thing is, the other point that you're making here is, it used to be Republicans were just fine with rain on election day, right? The fewer people that showed up, the better. But that is flipped. Like we're the ones, depending on turnout now, right? We're the ones that need all these people to go vote.
Right. Okay. So here we got our response. Wow. That's not good news.
That's not good news. So, yeah. So it's tight down there. So, South Texas is volatile. Democrat Party was in charge for about 110. They were like the PAN and the PRI in Mexico. They just didn't lose elections, and if they did lose elections, they still didn't lose elections. So it's the South Texas counties. You got to go down there and you got to win it because they'll take it from you. They don't, no compunction.
Sounds like I might have to make my first ever contribution to a political campaign in Texas.
There you go.
I guess every dollar counts based on the amount of money it takes to win anything these days. So Adam Schiff is going to face Steve Garvey. What an interesting. I mean, here's Garvey, who was not really on the radar because of this jungle primary. But
he should have been.
Right? He should have been. I mean, the old traditional way was it should have been a Schiff versus Garvey race, right?
Yeah.
Instead of and then I'm not sad to see Katie Porter and Barbara Lee go.
No, at all.
I mean, Garvey's chances of winning that seat, I think, are probably relatively pretty slim. But you never know. I mean, he does have some name recognition in a sense as a baseball star, right? But is that
all
enough?
he did was play for the Dodgers and the Padres?
Is it enough? I mean, Adam Schiff. I mean, they're in a Democrat state still.
Yeah, it's an overwhelmingly Democrat state, and you got to figure almost everyone who voted for Katie Porter or Barbara Lee is going to go to Schiff over Garvey. But there's a state with poop and syringes in the middle of downtown, of tent cities in all its major cities. A lot of crime, a lot of property values destroyed, rampant shoplifting. Violent crime in the streets. It's not unheard of that Garvey could marshal. They could ride the wave, right? I'm not sure that what did Trump get? He got 73% there last night, so he did pretty well in California.
Yeah. So I'm not. I think Schiff still wins, but it'll be interesting to see. I mean, it'll just kind of more interesting to see how Steve Garvey campaigns and what he does. I mean, how much does he? How much is he able to capitalize on his name recognition and everything like this? I mean, he is, 75 years old and all of that, but it's not impossible. It's just not probable. But who knows? I mean, I was a Steve Garvey fan when I was a kid, so I would hope that would be. I would love to see that happen, but I'm not holding my hopes up for much of that at this point. But I mean, Schiff in essence really kind of helped him, right? I mean, that's the guy he wanted to face. Schiff didn't want to face Katie Porter, and that would have just been a knockdown, drag out fight, even though he probably would have beaten her. But it's just that she would have just used up a lot of his resources.
There are a lot of people over the years who have claimed that there's a lot of dirt out there on Adam Schiff. If there is, that's true. San Diego's getting bad. If there is, this is the time to show it, right?
Yeah.
It's a winnable. It's the best chance you're ever going to have.
Yeah, and to Bob's comment about San Diego, it's interesting because the thought I was having this morning is that might want to take take my wife out to Southern California and go down to San Diego or do something for a few days or whatever. But I thought, I don't think San Diego is quite like it used to be, and I'm gonna have to do a little more homework on that. It's been a number. Years.
They also, there's so many tunnels under San Diego that they're worried like when they have an earthquake, that a lot of it's just gonna, yeah. So
that's not a comforting thought, Brian, at all. I want to just get your feeling about these stories that popped up about Trump's alleged cash squeeze.
Well, I mean, they took True Social public, and he's supposed to get about $4.5 million out of that, $4.5 billion out of that. So I think that would alleviate any cash squeeze. He filed suit yesterday. He's challenging the E. Jean Carroll verdict. They're trying to get the verdict overturned. I think that the Letitia James verdict will get overturned. It looks like a takings, an Eighth Amendment violation. The lawyers who are reading this stuff and talking about it, it sounds pretty strong there. So on paper, there's some pretty serious claims against this stuff, but Trump has a lot of sources of income, and I'm not really worried about whether he's going to be able to pay for supper tonight.
And I'm just still bothered by the fact that they're willing to put up something, they're willing to put up a significant amount of money against this to appeal this, but they've been told that they have to put up the whole nut. In essence, they have to put up a bond for the whole nut. Yeah, that's it. The fine itself was ridiculous.
Right.
So
to make you put up the whole thing to appeal it is ridiculous.
Yeah. I mean,
you're not trying to be fair. You're trying to screw Trump. And I think, when you have people running for office on the platform of screwing Trump, right, and then these kind of things happen, I think you got to look at like the justice system and like, how does this happen? How do we let this go on in America?
Yeah. And I think the outrageousness of that fine itself also spurs people on Trump. I mean, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they can see it's.
I think that kind of shocked America's conscience when they're like, this is way out of line.
Yeah. It'll be kind of interesting. Your thoughts on Mitch McConnell stepping down in November as the leader?
So, Mitch was very good on the judges. He got us the right judges. Okay. But what happened to Mitch is this. The immigration bill, they cooked up this bill, Mitch and James Lankford, and the Democrats went in the room, hashed out this bill. Okay. Said, hey, come on, MAGA House, you gotta pass our bill. It's bipartisanly negotiated. Like, because one of the partisans now is not really the Republicans, right? It's MAGA, right? It's not, if you're speaking from the Republican Party and you're not speaking for MAGA, or you're not consulting MAGA on it, you're going to find yourself out on a limb. And that's what happened to McConnell, is he found himself out on a limb on this bill. And they're like, we need, if our leader, if the work of our leader is going to say, promote this bill, we're going to pass this bill, then, we're going to need a new leader. And so he negotiated his way out to be able to stay on till November to do it. But, he's out because they try to do a thing without consulting MAGA. They act like MAGA doesn't exist. It's 50% of the country. And they just act like they're not even there, and they're so stupid and whatnot that we don't have to consult them. We don't have to include them in the lawmaking process at all. And it's like they got called. And Johnson, if he put it up, there's a few Ken Bucks in the House who would cross over and vote for it and so forth. But, the people who put Mike Johnson in power, both the voters in Louisiana and his fellow members in Congress, they're quite happy with what he's doing. And if Mike Johnson can finish the job of standing up to this legislation and to the Ukraine money bill, he'll be speaker for a long time.
Yeah. And I want to say that, look, Mitch McConnell was, I think overall, he was a very good leader for the Republican Party. He knew how to kind of keep that coalition together. He got votes. He did a lot of things that were very positive. Not everybody liked everything he did. You never are going to agree 100% with everything the leader has done. But
especially in the Senate, where
Yeah.
you if you don't understand the parliamentary procedure of the Senate, then like a lot of the things that you really want to run out and do, you cannot do. And so, and he understood that and how to count the votes and so forth. And the keeping Merrick Garland off the court was brilliant, right? That was brilliant. And it took an enormous amount of political courage, but he did it. He stood up for it, and he spared America having a really terrible person on the Supreme Court right now.
Yeah, and I think when he made his speech about that he was going to step down, I thought he was very good, because I think he kind of admitted to the realization that the party has kind of passed him by, in the sense of you talked about MAGA. I mean, it is there's a very big MAGA wing in there, and that is not Mitch McConnell's wing.
Right.
And he looked at that, and I think he looks at his age, and he's had a few issues lately, and you're kind of like, well, maybe this will be my final term in office. I'm 82 and whatnot, and maybe I can bow out gracefully. And I think he was very graceful in this exit. I didn't sense any bitterness or anything like this, and ready to turn it over. So we're running low on time, but just quickly, who do you think is in the lead to succeed him?
I've been asking people who work in and around the Senate that question since it happened, and no one's given me a good answer. So, I mean, if I had to hazard a guess, someone who can be said to have MAGA credentials, but is not fully of that world. Okay. So to me, I don't think it'll be Thune or Cornyn, the guys in running to it. Barrasso is a little more possible to me. But I mean, it's also somebody who can herd the cats, right? Who can get all these little presidents to do what they want to do. So, I don't know. I don't really know what to tell you on that one right now.
And they got to be able to raise the money.
Yeah, they got to be able to raise the money, and it's got to be. The other thing is, that's been a black hole. Everybody blamed Trump for what happened in the midterms and 2020 congressional elections, but Mitch would not spend money on MAGA candidates, right? And that really hurt those candidates. You have the guy down in Arizona, he's outspent 11-1, and he loses, barely loses to Mark Kelly. So, that's got to be addressed.
All right, I'm giving you 60 seconds to close it out.
60 seconds. I better look at our list. Our list says Cinema getting out. It may help Kari Lake a little bit. That's going to be a very close race. I think the Caitlin Clark, congratulations. What a tremendous player. And I say as an LSU guy, and grew up watching Pete Maravich and appreciate what he did. She took more time, and she had threes, and I've heard all that stuff. But man, she's also operating in a world where every single school really cares about basketball now, and she's playing some extremely good competition. And congratulations to her. Cinema getting out may mean that'll be tough. I said that. And State of the Union, he'll be drugged up. I mean, we always, we run those films about, him can't remember what he says. They'll have him ready for that.
Or wish they called in sick, like Bob said.
Yeah.
All right, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Please, as always, stay safe and stay well. Remember, we live in the greatest country in the world. Do not let anyone tell you otherwise. And as always, God bless America, and we will see you again next week.